Good evening. Thank you for your patience. I know it was hard for you. I know. I got. You're going to complain anyway. Yeah. Baruch Hashem. Today we are starting Maseches Sanhedrin, 113 blots. Somebody told me the date. I can't remember when it ends, but it's right before Pesach. Wow, that's pretty impressive. And what we're going to be discussing in great part in this first parak is a lot of the halachos that apply about when we need a bezdin of 3 versus when we need a bezdin of 23 versus when we need a bezdin of 71, or foreshadowing, maybe 70. We have to figure out what that actual bezdin looks like. How could it be an even number? We always have to have acharei rabim lahatos. We'll get into a little bit of that sugya today. Let's get started. This is one of, if not the longest Mishnah in Shas. Does anybody know if it's the longest? Let's just call it that.
Longest one I ever know.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't know if that's the measure alone, but it is a zaftig piece of Mishnah, full solid Amud. But it's not hard, but let's jump in. Of course, let's remember that we're going to go back over the next many blot to analyze this Mishnah. And really, this Mishnah is not unique. It's just that other Mishnayos are truncated. Really, we would have expected 10 lines at a time. Okay, we're getting it all at once. Says the Mishnah, Sanhedrin Daf Beis, top of the page. Dine mamanis b'shlosha. When we are dealing with monetary issues, we need a bezdin of 3. Gzelos v'chavalos b'shlosha. When we're dealing with theft or with damages, 3. Nezek v'chati nezek, tashlumei kefil v'tashlumei arba v'chamisha b'shlosha. When we're dealing with full damages, half damages, double payments for theft, and paying 4 and 5 for mechira or tvicha, as we've learned about in previous masechtas, b'shlosha. And here we start with our first machlokes in the parak. Ha'ones v'hamefate v'hamotzi shemra. If a person violates a woman, or mefate, a man seduces a woman, or if he's motzi shemra, and here, and now I can finally say Rashi correctly instead of like I've been calling the Rashbam Rashi. Rashi says 7 lines down, Dibra Maschal motzi shemra. What's a dogma of that? Lo matzasi levitcha besulim. He lies and says after the night that they got married, Lo matzasi levitcha besulam, your daughter should have been a besula. Turns out she was a beula. And he wasn't telling the truth. That's motzi shemra. Classical misconception. I would say to my kids, don't say that, it's lashon hara. And they say, but it's true. No, that's the definition of lashon hara. Is saying something true that's not nice. If you're saying something not true that's not nice, that's motzi shemra. And it's a difference, a different isser. And by Motzi Shemra, says the Gemara in all these cases, Bishlosha Divi Reb Meir. However, B'chachamim Omrim, Motzi Shemra be'esrim u'shloshim sheyesh bodin nefashos. Because if maybe she was guilty and she slept with someone when she was married and there were 8, she's going to be put to death. So now that the Motzi Shemra can, in theory, lead to capital crime, capital punishment, I should say, therefore we should be careful and have a bezdin shel esrim b'shalosh. Makos b'shlosha, mishum b'shmol amru be'esrim b'shlosha. With Makos, some say 3, some say 23. Ibur hachodesh, when we have to decide if a month is going to be 29 or 30 days, because we know from the Gemara, I believe it's in Rosh Hashanah, that 29.954, whatever the decimal point is, famous Esha Torah argument, that the Gemara was down to multiple decimal points of accuracy of the exact length of a lunar month. Very, very impressive feat. But not so impressive when they heard it from their Rebbe, who heard it from the Rebbe, who heard it from Moshe, who heard it from the Eibishter. But that's what the Gemara says, is that is a din that is determined b'shlosha. However, and Ibur Hashana, do we add another Adar? That's b'shlosha divrei Reb Meir, b'shem Gamliel Omer, b'shlosha matchilin. We start the conversation about the Ibur Hashana with 3, uv'chamisha nosin v'nosnin, and the dialogue continues with 5, v'gomrim b'shiva, and we have no idea what any of this means because we're only familiar with 3. What's 5 and 7? Not for tonight. If in fact they ended up determining with 3 that it should be an Iber Yor, so the halacha is that it's considered to be an Iber Yor even if you break the rules of 5 and 7. Again, we don't know what all this means. First are the long lines on Beis and Aleph. Smicha Zakenim, if we have people who are doing smicha, which is pressing down on an animal for a korban. In this particular case, fascinating Rashi that requires way more time than we have. Rashi here says that when we're talking about smicha zakenim, what we are talking about is al rosh par he'elim davar shel tzibur. That's Rashi a third of the way down, maybe a quarter of the way down. This is talking about a korban that's brought when Bezdin makes a psak that's incorrect and people actually follow it. That korban, when there is smicha on that korban, then It requires 3, as we'll soon see. What?
Personal korban, the person bringing the korban does the smicha. Why is the zaken doing smicha? Because it's his korban.
But my nafkamina. Smicha, why does that smicha need shlosha? Why doesn't all smicha require shlosha? You're right.
I think it means the case of.
But why? Why did the Mishnah do that? Why would the Mishnah? Who cares what the case is? Smicha should require. If you're saying smicha zakanim requires 3, all smicha should require 3. I'm asking that the word zakanim indicates something going on here, that the elders made an error. I hear that. I just don't.
Not sure. I think there's.
There is Torah here, I'm sure. We just didn't. This Masechta I learned when I was in Grus, I think my 3rd year, and I think that was the year that my twins were born. So Pasha didn't show up for 3 months. So, as you can attest to, I don't know. You probably did show up if I know you well enough.
Nope.
Okay, fine. I feel better now. So smicha zaken ve'arifas egla, the actual breaking of the neck of an animal in the case of egla arufa, b'shlosha divrei Reb Shimon, Reb Yehuda Omer b'chamisha, with 5 people. Achalitza, when chalitza needs to be done, b'hamiunin, miun, as we've learned many times over, especially in Maseches Yevamos, is when a girl who is not bas mitzvah gets married at the behest of her brother and or mother, when her father's not alive, and she wants to leave that marriage. It needs to be done b'shlosha neter, avayim, meiser, sheni. These 2 things that really need to be eaten in Yerushalayim. She'ein damav yidun. We don't know how much it costs. How do we assess the cost of those? According to some of the meforshim, the rotting fruits of these things that now need to be cashed out. So the halacha is b'shlosha. Hekdeshos b'shlosha, with hekdesh we need 3. Ha'arach and ha'metaltalin b'shlosha. When we're making a ha'arach and we're saying I'm going to give a value to the Beis Hamikdash similar to the cost of the table, right? That's a ha'aracha. I'm giving you a mashal, l'ma davar dome. I want to give you the value of X. So says the Gemara that requires shlosha. Yehuda Omer echad mehen kohen. One of them needs to be a kohen, which I kind of hear, but what does that even mean? What does that do with being a Kohen? I understand it's related to the Beis Hamikdash. Are we now saying that when it's all Beis Hamikdash stuff, one of the people has to be a Kohen? Is that what we're saying? Because we spoke about Hekdeshos a minute ago and didn't say that. So why are we here? Okay, that's going to be a question that needs to be answered. Karkaos, when it comes to Karka, Tisha v'Kohen, 9 plus 1. Again, same question again. And this line is super cryptic. Adam kayotze bahem. When we talk about a person, the halachos are the same. Very cryptic. Halfway down, 5 lines into the wide lines. Din and Nefasho, switching gears. Now, this is really the second topic of our Mishnah. The first one was primarily cases of shlosha. And over here, we changed gears. Din and Nefashos be'esrim shlosha. When we are talking about life and death cases in the Bezdin, we have to have 23. Harovea v'hanirba, in cases of bestiality, both for the perpetrator, one who is the perpetrator, and for a woman who is the recipient of. That's be'esrim shlosha. Shnema v'rakta sa'ishav v'esabehema v'omer v'esabehema ta'arogu. There, obviously, I don't know why why bring the pasuk? No, you didn't bring a pasuk for anything else, right? So these things all require commentaries, which we're not going to learn. Shor haniskal be'esrim v'shlosha. When it comes to a shor haniskal, that's a shor that needs to be stoned because it killed. So there, it requires 23. That's a little odd. Why does an animal need to have 23? Why do we have to adjudicate the death of an animal? I could understand a person is way more chashuv. You want to compare me to a cow? Why is it that the halacha is identical in regards to how many people are needed to adjudicate a case of a person being put to death and an animal being put to death? So the Gemara says, I'll tell you why. I love you must look at the drasha. Kimisas bailim, kach misas shashor. When we're talking about a death of a person, which requires 23, kach, the halacha is the same in regards to misas ashur, that they too also require 23. And similarly, hazei v'ha'ari v'hadov v'hanamer v'habardas v'hanachash misas and b'esrim shlosha, these animals that killed and now need to be killed requires 23. This is a ze'ev, is a wolf, a lion, a bear, a namer is a leopard, a bardalas is some type of weasel, a nachash is a snake. All of them need to be killed under 23. Rabbi Eliezer is not having it. Omer kol hakodem lahargan zacha. I don't know what you guys are waiting for. You're going to go collect 23 people. It's a cobra. Go get a hatchet and cut its head off. What are we discussing over here? Now, obviously, if there's a sakana, of course you can kill it. That's not what we're talking about. Somebody did the little snake trance. It's sitting. It's fine. It's safe. It's not going to hurt anybody. But l'maisa, there's a machlokes tanaim, and then oddly, the Tanakama already said his sheet. And now look at this: Rabbi Akiva Omer misasim b'esrim shlosha. What's Rabbi Akiva being mechadesh? You sound like the Tanakama. Okay. Next, 2/3 of the way down at the two dots in Dan and Lois HaShevet, we don't judge a Shevet where most of those people turn to Avodah Zarah, Veloas HaNavi HaSheker, Veloas HaKohen Gadol who has done something wrong, El Al Pi Bezdin Shel Shivim Ve'echad. Now we're upping our game. The first part of the Mishnah, the first third of the page was about a Bezdin Shel Shalosh. The second part of the page, the middle third of the page, was discussing a Bezdin Shel Esrim V'Shalosh. Here we're talking about Shivim Ve'echad. Ve'en motzin l'melchemes harshus El Pi Bezdin Shel Shivim Ve'echad. If you're doing a Bezdin Shel, if you're doing a Melchemes Rishus, you need permission from a Bezdin of Shivim Ve'echad. The nafkamina between a Melchemes Mitzvah and Melchemes Rishus. Melchemes Mitzvah is clearing the land of Eretz Yisrael from the Shiva Amamin, as opposed to, the Prime Minister says, I want to expand the borders of proper, not Eretz Yisrael of today, Eretz Yisrael of real, Yoshua, right, broader, the Transjordan. We're talking about a much bigger piece of property. What we have now is a joke compared to what we should have. Yachasit to what is halachically the case, and even legally within the British mandate, is much bigger than what we have right now. We did some, maybe, I don't know what we did. So, but if it's a Melchemes Rishus, you want to expand your borders and take over Iraq, so that you cannot do in a halachic country of Eretz Yisrael, you can only do al pi shivim ve'echad. Ein mosifin al ha'ir ve'al ha'azaros. You cannot add to Yerushalayim or to the Azaros al pi bezdin shel shivim ve'echad. And osin Sanhedrios l'shvatim al pi bezdin shel shivim ve'echad. This is the checks and balances. You can only open Batei Din Sanhedrios for Shvatim based on the bezdin of shivim ve'echad, because that guarantees a continuity of proper halacha, because the bezdin shel shivim ve'echad has to put a stempel on that bezdin. So Shevet Levi is a terrible example, literally the worst example, because they have no property. Any other Shevet, Zvulun, Asher, Yisachar, you want a bezdin, go get approved by the Sanhedrin in Yerushalayim. They'll give you the stempel. Otherwise, no dice. We don't destroy a city unless there's 71. We do not burn down a city that is an ir nidachas besapar. What does this word besapar mean? Look at Rashi, 7 lines from the bottom, toward the beginning of the line, Dibur Maschel besapar, kracha ma'abdil ben Yisrael and It's a buffer. You cannot burn down that city. It has to stay alive. And as well, the low shalosh, you're not allowed to do 3 cities in a row. Val osin achas oshtaim, you can do 2 cities in a row. All this will be discussed in the Gemara. Fourth topic of the Mishnah, 10 lines from the bottom, Sanhedrin Gdol Haisa Shel Shivim Ve'echad Uktana Shel Asar Esrim Mishlosha. As we've already seen, we would have thought organizationally that this would have been written first, but it's not. A bezdin of a bezdin that's a bezdin gadol has 71, and a small one has 23. Minayin legdola shishal shivim ve'echad. How do we know the bigger one is 71? Shneimar asveli shivim zikenim shivim ish miziknei Yisrael. Gather me, says Moshe, 70 people. Moshe al Gabein, 70 plus 1, last I checked, is 71. However, Yehuda Omer Shivim, the pasuk doesn't say 71. You're right, Moshe was there, but it says gather me 70. So the Chorah Sanhedrin is 70. Machlokes Tanoim. Do we say the Bezdin was 71 or 70? Put on your thinking caps, because this is a little bit of some, I don't want to call it algebra, but it's unique math. Says the Gemara Shenemar v'shaftu ha'eda. One pasuk says that the Eda should be judged. V'hitzilu ha'eda, and we know that the word Eda is 10. Eda shofetzes ve'etam Eda matzelas. One, there should be enough people that can at least argue the side of the people, and one that can argue against the people. Harekan esrim, and parenthetically, minayin le'eda shishal asara. How do we know that that the word Eda in general means Asar? This is a well-known question and answer. Shnei Amar, in regards to the Meraglim. Says the Gemara, Ad Masai Le'eda Ra Azos Yatsu Yoshua v'Kalev. There were 12 Shvatim that sent the Meraglim. 2 of them stayed righteous, the rest of them were bad, and we refer to them as an Eda. So therefore, 12 minus 2 is 10, referred to as an Eda. So we know 10. Very good. Let's get back to our sig of 23. We've already figured out 20. The pasuk says, Shaftu Eda v'itzilu Eda. That's 20. Minayin lahavi od shlosha, says the Gemara. Mimash Moshe nemar lo siach rabim l'raos. Once I know that you cannot go after the majority for bad, says the Gemara, I should really, The majority that I need is going to be Latova, so I have to be +1. In Kin Lamanemar Achar Rabim Lahatos. So says the Gemara, a very important yesod. This will permeate many halachos that we're learning. We're on the very last two lines of Daf Beis Amud Aleph, about to make our first turn in Maseches. Sanhedrin says the Gemara, Lo kata yascha Latova, hata yascha Lara. When we have a majority that's tov, it's different than a majority that's ra. And here's the drasha. Hata yascha Latova al pi echad. So if you have a Bezdin Shel Shalosh, 12 to 11 to acquit, that works. But 12 to 11 to be Mechayev doesn't work. So if you have 23 people, what is the minimum ratio of negative to positive that works? It has to be 13 to 10. It can't be 11 to 12 because we need a unique majority when it comes to finding someone guilty. So therefore, because when it comes to something good, the margin of error can be 1, and there's 23 dayanim, 12 to 11 in the positive to acquit, no problem. Gap of 1. That's what the Mishnah says. But because when it comes to finding someone guilty, we need a gap of 2, a minimum gap of 2. There's no such thing as a gap of 2 with 23, and that doesn't work. You can't do 12 and what? 12 and 10? 13 and 11, that's too many. So 13 and 10 must be the answer. So that's how it would work. And that's what the Mishnah says, al pi shnayim. That brings us to the top of Daf, Beis Amud Beis. So now, in theory, at this point, mathematically, I could have come up with 22, right? Because what did we say? I need at least 10 who, if we divvied the group pretty evenly, I need at least 10 people, 10 to say innocent, 10 to say guilty. So we have that, minimum 20 in these cases. And then you taught me a new rule that when we have a guilty verdict, it has to be by a margin of 2. So what does that teach me? 22. 22, so that's 12 to 10. That's a gap of 2. So why not leave it at 22? 23. That's the next part of the Mishnah. Vein bezdin shakel. Halacha is you're not allowed to have a bezdin shakel because you could be in a deadlock. You could have, with 22, you could have 11 to 11. So mosif and alein od echad harei kan esrim ushlosha. Very good. The next and final part of the Mishnah asks, V'kama yehe be'ir usehei ru'uya l'Sanhedrin. How big does a city have to be in order to benefit from, to be eligible for a Sanhedrin? Says the Gemara, according to this Me'ah ve'esrim, you need to have 120. Rabbi Nechemya Omer Masayim Ushloshim, 230, Keneged Sare Asaros, based on a breakdown of a tenth. Namely, if you have 230 people, what we would do is we would say there would be 1 dayan for each set of 10. There's 23 of them. 23 times 1 is 23 people.
Still a lot of people who are basically the great majority of the town.
Is not Sanhedrin.
It is.
No, it's 1 of 10.
A substantial number.
It's a substantial number of Talmidei Chachamim. That's correct. Halavai, we should have 10% of our community be Dayanim. There were communities like that, I would imagine, in world history, but they were rare. In our community, I would say we're 0.001. I don't know what the numbers are. We have 25,000 from Jews, maybe Bukoshi in Chicago. I don't even think so. How many denim do we have? Less than 20? I don't know. Maybe we have more than 20. Probably have more than 20. Let's say 30. Every Bezdin has 4 or 5. They have. But I also know people who are just Dayanim. Lo them. Okay, that brings us to the Gemara. And the Gemara opens with a question that it's bothered by. If you look back at the very first din that we learned on Daf Beis Amud Aleph, we made a distinction between dinei mamanis, which is financial matters, and then we drilled down in financial matters to say gzelos v'chavalos. It says the Gemara, I don't understand. Atu gzelos v'chavalos lav dinei mamanis ninu? Isn't theft and damages, isn't all of that part of the broader umbrella of mamanis? Why did you distinguish in the Mishnah, asks the Gemara, between that which is broadly mamanis, the higher level, umbrella level of conversation, as opposed to gzelos v'chavalos, which you didn't even need to mention, because guess what? That's also financial. Leave it alone. Leave it out. That's the Gemara's question. And this question will consume our conversation for almost the entire day. And we're going to be stopping at the two dots toward the bottom of Gimel Amud Aleph, about 7 lines from the bottom. Let's look at the Gemara's conclusion over here. This will end up being Lemaisa. Amar Rabbi Abo, Mahain Ktani. This is teaching us a Mahain. What is it that we're talking about? Namely, the Gemara said Mamanis, and then we wanted to know what kind of Mamanis. So the Mishnah said Mamanis. We wanted to know what kind. So the Mishnah said Dine Mamanis Bishlosha. What kind? Gzelos v'chavelos Bishlosha. That's what the Gemara meant. Mahain Dine Mamanis, Gzelos v'chavelos. Aval, says Rabbi Abo. What must be the case that's being left out intentionally by the Mishnah by articulating that Mamanis are Gzelos v'chavelos? Says the Gemara, Aval, what is not included in the din of our Mishnah? Hodos v'halvos lo. Okay, fascinating. Yitzricha, we need to have all of these halachos. De'itana dine mamanis. If all that our Mishnah had taught was the case of mamanis, and it didn't say gzelos ve'avelo, gzelos v'chavalos, avamina da'afilo hodos v'halvos, I might have thought to include erroneously the case of hodos ve'halvos, which is cases of admittance and cases of loans. And that's not meant to be included in our Mishnah. Therefore, Tana, gzelos ve'chavalos. We needed to have the case of gzelos v'chavalos mentioned, because only by adding the language of gzelos v'chavalos were we able to exclude from the din of our Mishnah hodos ve'halvos, without which we would have made an error. The itana gzelos v'chavalos. If I didn't have mamanis and I only had the case of gzelos v'chavalos, v'lok tani dine mamanis, havamina hu adin de'afilu hodos ve'halvos. Again, I needed both languages. If I only had one, I would have mistakenly, I would have misunderstood the din about gzelos, about hodos ve'halvos. Excuse me. The primary three scenarios, the eker gimel, the three that we need here, the shlosha is b'gzelos v'chavalos. Where do we see this? How do we know that gzelos for sure requires a bezdin of 3? Halfway down on beis mid beis. Gzelos d'chsiv v'nikra balabais el ha'elohim. This Elohim is not Hashem's name, and sometimes we think we say Elohim. That's not correct. This is talking about a bezdin, and it's an amazing idea that the same exact word that's a Shem Hashem here is not a Shem Hashem, and that we're allowed to say it, and there's nothing wrong with saying it. It's not a halachic issue. Fascinating. Same exact word. Masha Ein Kain, the Adnos name, the Aleph, Daled, Nun, and then Yud, there you can never say on its own. You can never say it just unless it's for chinuch purposes. Sometimes when I do a bris today, I did a bris for a family. The father was Amaratus Dorai, so he didn't know how to read Hebrew. So I said, "Do you want to go word for the bracha, or do you just want me to do it?" He's like, "You do it. It's fine." That's totally mutter. I'm allowed anyone. The Sandik, the Moel, a lot of people can make the bracha of lahachnisa b'risa shlav rabim. But often, I will go word for word, Baruch, Baruch, Ata, Ata. In that case, I'm allowed to say Shem Hashem. It's for chinuch purposes. That's totally mutter. But that's the rare exception. That's the very rare exception. But with the word Elohim as it relates to God, but Elohim as it relates to Bezdin, fascinating. Just fascinating that halacha is so dynamic that your pure mindset around the word is the matir. It's a fascinating idea. So, anyways, how do we know that by gzelos that we have a din of shlosha, that we need to have 3 dayanim? Because the pasuk says as much. And what about by chavalos? Mali chaval begufa, mali chaval b'mamono. Who cares what the difference is, a person's body or a person's money? And Tana, we therefore have a rule, mahein dine mamanis gzelos v'chavalos. That's our Mishnah. Aval, odos v'alvoslo. But I would have made an error if I didn't have both languages. Now, these last 10 lines that start with vitzricha, these last 10 lines are basically going to show that the Mishnah was super strategic. It spoke about mamanis and it spoke about gzelos v'chavalos. If I didn't write both of those, I would have made an error that I would have included halvaos and hodos into the din of our Mishnah, which is not the case. But says the Gemara Ulamai, in what way are gzelos v'chavalos different than, because those are included in the Gimel, how are they different than our Mishnah? After all, if you want to say that the intent of our Mishnah by excluding Hodos v'Halvos was to teach us that those cases don't need Gimel Dayanim. That's pashut not true. V'ha'amar Rabbi Abba, Shnayim shedanu dinei mamanas l'divrei hakol, ein dineim din. That if you're missing one dayan, you only have two. Halacha l'maisa, ein dineim din. What do we see from here? That even by Hodos v'Halvos we need dayanim. So we went through all of this halabaloo to find out that Hodos v'Halvos are not meant to be included in our Mishnah. But to what end? It can't be because of the dayanim of Gimel. Pashat that they need dayanim of Gimel. So here the Gemara introduces a nuance, one that we maybe have heard of in certain frames, but here we're going to see it explicitly. Says the Gemara 8 lines from the bottom. What is it that is excluded here? Ela delo ba'inan mumchen. There's Gimel dayanim, and there's Gimel dayanim mumchen. What's an example where we in Klal Yisrael rely on Gimel dayanim that are not mumchen? Ataras nedarim. I'm not a mumche. I've been a dayan dozens of times every year of my life, basically since I've been an adult. And what do they say in the shtar? Dayanim mumchen. Sheker v'chazab, and everybody knows it. We should not be even saying that. I think the original script was meant for the real deal. We should probably parentheses that, because none of us are mumchen. We don't have any dayanim. We have no dayanim in our base medrash, I don't think. When Rabbi Reese is here, how many do we don't have dayanim? So it's really, the language is a shtickle, maraf sinigra. It really doesn't make sense. So what does the Gemara mean over here? It means to say as follows. We pointed out in the Tzrichusa when it says that we need both the word mamanis and we also need the words of gzelos v'chavalos that it comes to exclude hodos v'halvos from our Mishnah. To what end are we excluding hodos v'halvos? It says the Gemara, when it comes to the world of mamanis and gzelos v'chavalos, there we need dayanim mumchen. However, when it comes to the world of hodos v'halvos, yes, we need gimel, but not mumchen. Any three of us, Hedyotos, we can paskin a shaila. You have to know the halacha. You can't actually be us because we're amaratzim. But if we were at least hedyotos, together we could paskin these shailas. Says the Gemara, how is it that you made this distinction between gzelos v'chavalos on the one side and hodos v'halvos on the other? They're all under that broad umbrella of mamanis. I know you made the distinction. I know, but I don't understand why you made the distinction. After all, says the Gemara, my kasavar. What is it that you hold? Ikasavar eruv parshios kasuv kan. If you want to say that all the psukim, I'm going to just simplify this because there's a lot of lengthy Rashis, as you can see here. For the Rashbam, this would have been a normal size. But for Rashi, this is extremely long. It's 15 lines of Rashi in a middle width column. So I'm just going to shorten this because we don't have time. If you want to say Eruv Parshios, that all of the Parshios that discuss Mamanis are under the broader umbrella of Mamanis, if you want to say that they're all similar, Leboy Name Mumchen. If Mamanis requires a Mumche, then Hodos V'Halvos should also require a Mumche. V'ikasavar ein Eruv Parshios Kasav Kan. If you want to say that not everything in the world of Mamanis is the same, well, then Shlosha Lamali, then why do I need Shlosha? But you're dancing at both weddings. You're saying that it's shlosha, which is a feature of mamanis, but you're saying that it doesn't need mumchus, which is not a feature of mamanis. So which one is it? The Gemara says, to conclude 4 or 5 lines from the bottom, Lo'olam kasavra erev parshios kasav kan. Really, according to the author of this shita, which as we can see on the 6th line of the Gemara's Rabbi Abba, really, he says that Kosavar Eruv Parshios Kosav Kan. Everyone agrees that it's Eruv Parshios. That's why we need Gimel. Ubedinu diliboy na memomchen. And really, when it comes to Odos Valvos, we really should taka have mumchen. Why don't we? V'hai deloba inan mumchen mishum de Rabbi Chanina. We should have mumchen, even by Odos Valvos. But when it comes to the world of Hodos Valvos, the Chachamim had a secondary concern that overrides the demand of having mumchen in the world of mamanis. What's the override? The Amar Reb Chanina, 2 lines from the bottom, Dover Torah, Echad dine mamanis, Echad dine nefashos, Bedrisha v'chakira. When we're talking about dine mamanis, and when we're talking about dine nefashos, Bedrisha v'chakira, We need to do this intense, and we're not going to focus on this now. We need to do this intensive drisha v'chakira. And Rashi briefly animates for us what this is. Tzarech livdok esoidim be'ezeh yom be'ezeh shah halvehu. You need drisha v'chakira when it comes to dinei mamanis v'dinei nefashos shene'emar mishpat echa yelochem. Umatam amru, top of Gimel Amud Aleph. Umatam amru dinei mamanis lo bo'in drisha v'chakira. Why is it that when it came to certain aspects of dinei mamanis, we don't require drisha v'chakira? Shelo tinol delas kedei shelo tinol delas bifnei lovin. Because if you're ever so strict, no one's going to lend money. No one's going to be able to borrow. The threshold is too high. The rules are too tight. And the same is true here. Where did we make our distinction in our Mishnah? We said as follows, two camps. On the right, we had the camp of gzelos v'chavalos, theft and damages. There, gimel and mumche. And then on the left, we have the worlds of hodos ve'alvos. There, we have a concern of shalotin delos bifnei lovin. And therefore, while we do require gimel under that broad umbrella of mamanis that always require gimel, we don't require them to be mumchen because we're concerned about shalotin delos bifnei lovin. Says the Gemara, Elameata, if what you're saying is true, that really Hodos Velvos falls under the broad section of Mamanis, and for technical reasons of Shalotino Delis Bifnei Lovin, we're not going to require a Mumche. Elameata, To, Lo Yishalmu. That if there's a mistake by that particular group of Gimel, then the group of Gimel shouldn't have to pay. Now, this is a side halacha that we may not be familiar with. Take a look at Rashi on the 5th line. Elameata, if what you're saying is true, then tohed yotos b'dinei mamanis lo yishalmu. Maybe if the dinei mamanis, if the hedyotos made a mistake in dinei mamanis, they should not have to pay. The kevan de birshus rabbanon konachte, that since these three hedyotos had permission to literally to go down, but what it means is to paskin on this world of dinei mamanis, they had permission from the rabbanim havu lehu kemumchen. And look at this. This is such an important line. The halacha is like this. If there is a bezdin mumchen and they make a mistake, the halacha is that they are pater from the financial errors of their psak. So that's the deal. They're pater. Now, really, the world of hodos ve'alvaos is part of mamanis. The only reason we don't require mumchen is because we're concerned about shalotino delis bifnei lovin. But since fundamentally hodos ve'alvaos is part of the broader world of mamanis, and since the gimel are paskening birshus the chachamim, they should be pater if they make a mistake. Says the Gemara, no, we can't say that. If they're going to be pater for making a mistake, again, because why? You mean you're going to be my dayan, but there's no accountability? I'm so uncomfortable with this, and you're not even a mumche. You're a B-rated dayan. I'm forget it. I'm not even going to borrow money. What? You can choose to go to a proper bezdin, or you can stand on the corner of Tui and McCormick and pick a hedyot.
I'm ignorant. Why did you choose me? You chose an ignorant person. It's your fault.
It's true. So Rashi actually hints to the source of this. If you look back in the Rashi, we were just learning 4 lines down. At the end of that, we're going to see that there's a proper source on Daf Lamed Gimel, and I didn't look it up, but there is an answer to your question as to why it is that hedyotos would be on the hook if somebody did handpick them. You're right. You play your cards, man. Just go to the CRC. Go to Rabbi Reese, okay? I'm comfortable with that. And if he makes an error and the Torah says he's pater from paying me back, okay, it's a rare. It's probably never happened actually. It's a very rare occurrence, right? You know, Shulchan Aruch, Shachan Taz, all of them, all of them.
Factual.
What?
Factual. Misunderstood
factual. That's possible if it was presented poorly, but I don't know. I can't imagine. I don't know. Yeah. So impressive. So says the Gemara, okay, ihachi, if what you're saying is true, then tartek tani, two things were taught exactly the same. Dine mamanis b'shlosha hedyotos. This is what you should have taught. The Mishnah, to be efficient and lean, should have said, Dine mamanis, generally speaking, is b'shlosha hedyotos, but gzelos v'chavalos, this specific area requires b'shlosha mumchen. Question number one. V'odin, furthermore, question number two. Shlosha shlosha lamali. Why did it say the word shlosha twice in the first two lines of the Mishnah? Our Mishnah said dine mamanis b'shlosha and gzelos v'chavalos b'shlosha. Guys, that's the same category. Get lean. Cut out one of the words. What should it have said? Dine mamanis v'gzelos v'chavalos b'shlosha. Why did it have to say b'shlosha twice? So says the Gemara, Elam Arava Tartek Tani. Two things, in fact, are taught Mishum de Rabbi Chanina. Very cryptic answer. Very cryptic. So if you look in the margin, I don't know if you all have this, but I have the Rabbeinu Chananel in the margin over here. And this is a rare jump from our typical learning, but it's short and beautiful. If you look in the Rabbeinu Chananel, I have in the Oz V'Hadar, it's almost exactly halfway down. Dibur hamaschil uparik rava le'olam tartek tani. Klomar. This is what it means. Kidine mamanis. When we talk about mamanis, bein hodos ve'halvaos, whether or not we're talking about admissions and loans, bein dine gzelos, whether or not we're talking about theft. Shlosha mumchin ba'ina. We really do require three. Really, you're right. It really should all be the case that it's all in the realms of mumche. But we have an exception because of Rabbi Chanina. So says the Gemara. Again, still a cryptic answer, but that's the answer of Rava. And Ravacha Bred Ravika Amar a different answer. Mido Raisa Chad Nami Kosher. He holds the Minat Torah, even one is going to be kosher. Shnamar B'Tzedek Tishbot Amisecha. Let's work on our Hebrew grammar. You're the most Israeli one in the room. Tishbot is not Tishputu, right? Tishbotu, it's singular. So therefore, one should work. So what's the problem with one? Ela mishum yoshvei kronos. Why then do we have three? Because we don't want to have this yoshvei kronos, this guy sitting on the corner. He thinks he knows everything. Come ask me some shilas. But you've never seen three guys on the corner of Tui and McCormick panhandling? Let's say they were Yidden. Chevra, stop playing drums and come answer a shaila for me, right? You've never seen three Leitz on it? I've seen three Leitz on it. We've all seen. What? You don't have to go far. I actually think we qualify. Not to be rude to any of us, but I think together the Gemara, we're not hediotos. We don't know Shulchan Aruch Shach and Taz. We don't know. Those are the ABCs of what we should know. I mean, it should be simple. So what about three? Says the Gemara, and this is unbelievable because it's not true. Look at the Gemara's answer, halfway down. In a group of three, there's no way that one guy's not holding. So that's Pasha not true. This is a raya brura of Yeridas Hadoros. If there are three people who claim to be Dayanim, one of them has to be knowledgeable. Now I can tell you, as a Moel in the community, that there are Rabbanim who build their own Batei Din. They have got to just be not paying attention. How can you do that? And I've gotten into murky situations because I got a phone call from someone. I'm recording. I got a phone call from someone. Please fly here. We're doing 10 Atofas Dambris. We want you to be our Mo. I knew the name, and the name made me uncomfortable. I called her by first. I couldn't even get the question out of my mouth. Stay away with a 10-foot pole. Don't help them. Don't cajole. Don't help. Nothing. Stay away. Don't give them any chizuk. Another bezdin, different one. Rabbi first holds that their gerus is a gerus that is an efes, a total zero. The babies are goyim deraisa. Rabbi Reese holds it's a suffix. Well, you got to be crazy to make your own bezdin in the face of people like Rabbi Reese and Rabbi First. Half of a fellow that people would do that. But the Gemara says that if you do say you're going to do that, at least one of you should be a Talmud Chacham. So that's why we're concerned about Yoshvei Kronos for one. We're not concerned about Yoshvei Kronos for three. El me'ata ta'u lo yishal.
The bar of Gomer.
Wait. What'd you say? The bar of Gomer?
How did you think? First bloodline Rashi. I also thought, one was a real.
That's fine, but we couldn't.
Agreed.
We couldn't repeat the dinim of the Rambam. I don't know if this has anything to do with that. We're still not shy. We are in the category of Erlich. We're very good people. We are good people. We're well intended. I was loosely speaking, but
Why isn't there like a cohesive, like based in establishment throughout the United States where like there'd be
oh my you
cohesion so that we don't have you can't jump from one to the other.
halavai. That's what happened. That was what the Mishnah wrote over here. There's a bezdin shel shivim ve'echad, and no other batei din can exist without their permission. But because you have, again, CRC is in one machaneh, the Agud is in another machaneh. During COVID, they didn't agree with each other. One held it was a suffix din and fashos, and they closed all the shows. The other held it wasn't. Halvai, that would be the biggest. That's only going to happen with Mashiach. Or maybe Mashiach will come if that happens. I don't know which order it's going to happen in. Halavai. And that would be a dream. And that's what actually how the Shulchan Aruch started, because Rabbi Yosef Karo wanted to start that. He wanted to create uniformity in halacha, so he wrote the Shulchan Aruch. It's a big tumult.
How would this be uniform in halacha? There has to just be like a basin has to respect the decision of the basin. Like, oh, that's their decision. We don't hold that.
We have that here. That level we have here. If you're talking about the two bigger batei din here, we have.
There's offshoots sometimes.
We don't have any offshoots that are. But those are not in the shtat. Those are like.
Short answer.
It's exactly what happened. They couldn't get what they were. One of these rabbis called me and said, Rabbi Karesh, what do you recommend I do? So I said, you should send them to the CRC. Stop doing what you're doing. I'm not your mother, but I just stopped. Like it's so complicated. You know every nook and cranny of Hilchos Gerus. I learned Hilchos Gerus like Rosh Prakim. It's impossible. How do you know what Shmiras HaMitzvos means? I asked Rabbi Reese this question. He said to me a very small percentage of women from the Gerus and the CRC don't cover their hair. I said, but Shteit and Shulchan Aruch, you have to cover your hair. So if you're not covering your hair, isn't the Gerus invalid? He says, no. I'm like, how do you know where the line is? You're telling me these guys who, lo yu'man. It's a complete lack of Yiras Shamayim to insert yourself. And there's a Gemara like that if you, lo yada bativ gittin v'kedushin, don't touch it. Don't touch it. Just leave it alone. Just leave it alone. I don't want to get myself in trouble. I probably already did. Worry. Let's continue. What?
You're among friends.
I am now, but I'm on Zoom also, so I don't know. Well, Seth is my friend at the moment. Don't say anything. Very good food last night, by the way. Says the Gemara, okay, but maybe these guys who are hedyotos on the corner, one of whom is Gamir, he's knowledgeable. Maybe there we should say that he should not have to pay with the error. Says the Gemara, no, that's definitely not going to work, because then everyone in there, that's not going to work at all. It's going to create a tremendous amount of risk. And the Gemara wants to know, lastly for the day, Ma'ika bein Rava le Rav Acha bereid Rav Ika. What is the difference between the two answers that we just saw? We wanted to know, why is it that our Mishnah articulated both Dinei Mamanis and Gzelos v'Chavalos? Why didn't we consolidate the language into something tighter? And doubly, why did it say the word Shlosha twice? Says the Gemara, Ika beinayu, 2/3 of the way down to Amar Shmuel. The difference between Rava and Rav Acha bereid Rav Ika is the sheet of Shmuel. Shnayim shedanu dinehen din, ela shenikru bezin chatuv. According to Shmuel, and we've seen this Gemara before. Where did we see this? I remember it in Ksubis. The Gemara says that if there are two Jews who adjudicated a case, the halacha is that their din is binding. However, they're referred to as a bezdin chatuv. Li Rava, less like the Shmuel. According to Rava doesn't agree with Shmuel. They're not a bezdin chatuv, they're a bezdin shel zero. They don't have nothing's binding. But le Rav Acha bereid Rav Ika, who, based on the fact that he agreed to one person, it's just that because of Yoshvei Kronos it has to be three, we therefore see he agrees with Shmuel, le Rav Acha bereid Rav Ika, Islay de Shmuel, and that's the difference between Rava and Rav Acha bereid Rav Ika. We'll stop right here at the two dots of Nezek v'Chatzi, Nezek v'Chulei. Mirza Hashem on Shabbos will pick up with a blot and a half. Wishing you all a beautiful night.